Let's get back into the top 5 segment, starting with my top 5 favorite comic book writers. Let's go. Hello, YouTube. Axiom here, back at it again. This time with my favorite comic book writers. This one, well, I say it in every video, right? When it comes to the top 5, this one's very difficult because there's so many good writers. Now, one of the conversations that I just recently had with one of my best friends, who we call Locks, is everyone's very familiar with a lot of artists, with a lot of comic book, just general information. But when you start talking about specifics, whether it's inkers, colorists, writers, just artists in general, those that do more than one thing, starts getting a little bit difficult, especially if you're not reading comic books or if you just got into the genre, or maybe you've been in the genre and you've never really paid attention to things like inkers and colorists and writers and artists and the difference between all of these different segments of the comic book world. So, that being said, this is not the video where I'm going to get into the differences between everything, but this is very specific to comic book writers. My top 5 comic book writers. Let's go ahead and get into it. This one's going to be a little bit interesting. And if you're into comic books, you might be surprised about maybe some of the books that come up on this list just by name when I start naming them out. Who knows? Maybe you're like, actually, man, I already knew all that. Maybe you won't. Maybe you'll check some of those books out, which I always advocate for in this channel. But let's stop beating around the bush. Let's go ahead and get into the first one. As always, in no particular order, number one on my list of favorite comic book writers is Scott Snyder. Scott Snyder's the man. And I'm going to say that about all of these guys. But Scott Snyder, he's made my list on other things as well. But in this particular list, there's 2 comics that got me back into comic book reading. One of them was the Ultimate Universe, Brian Michael Bendis, as it pertains to Marvel. And then the other one was the New 52 Batman Court of Owls, written by Scott Snyder. The artist was, come on now, Greg Capullo. But this is a writer's list. Scott Snyder has written such great books as American Vampire, Black Mirror, as that was his first work on Batman. I mean, he did Witches. He's done so many books. Google that guy, ladies and gents. Scott Snyder, comic book, just writer. And you'll see the list of comic books that he's written. Every single one of them should entice you to read them. He's the man. But let's go on to number 2. Number 2 on the list is Chris Claremont. How can I not be a Chris Claremont fan? I mean, look at the room. What does that mean? For those that don't know, ladies and gents, Chris Claremont reinvigorated, dare I say, launched what is known as the popularity of the X-Men. He picked up a dying book as a writer and reinvigorated it in the most ginormous way possible. The Phoenix Saga and the Dark Phoenix Saga is how he kicked it off. I mean, he was there. He's the man. I've met him a couple of times. I have a bunch of books signed by him, and he's a talker. Anybody that watches this video that's ever met Chris Claremont knows that he is a talker. Waiting in a line with Chris Claremont to get your book signed takes forever. So worth it. Chris Claremont is the man as far as X-Men and just comic book legendary writers, in my opinion. Let's go on to number 3. Number 3 on the list is Frank Miller. When I got back into comics, when you get into comics, there's a couple of books that you must read if you're trying to just grasp and get into it. And I mean, it's a different journey for everyone. But if I had to recommend certain books, I mean, what's a better book than The Dark Knight Returns? Batman book by Frank Miller. This man is responsible for what we know now as the Michael Keaton and Tim Burton 89 Batman. They got all their inspiration from, also their inspiration from the Frank Miller take, which took on a much darker tone at the time that it was written back in the 80s. So, and then you combine that with the fact that the Netflix, if you don't read comics and you know the Netflix Daredevil series, that was inspired by Frank Miller's Daredevil. He reinvigorated not only Batman, but also Daredevil to just be so impactful on two humongous fronts, DC and Marvel, and to make that kind of an impact, especially when a lot of people, you got to look this up, told him that he would never amount to anything. Respectfully, Neil Adams. There's a story about Neil, the great Neil Adams. I love Neil Adams, but he told Frank Miller that you're never gonna do anything with your career, kid. You suck at drawing, and he kind of does. But Frank Miller's the man. You need to check out Frank Miller. He's the man for a reason. But let's go on to the next one. If you're enjoying my content, please hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, hit that notification bell so you're notified every time I drop a new video. Most importantly of all, thank you for watching. Thank you for watching. Number 4 on this list was a little bit tricky because I'll just say it. I wanted to go with Kevin Eastman. Technically Kevin Eastman, Peter Laird, because they are the inventors of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But I love the Turtles. Love them. But this is a top 5 writers list. So even though I am totally biased with the Turtles, if I'm going to strictly talk about, I had to check myself on this one. If I'm going to talk about writers, then I have to give this slot to Alan Moore. Alan Moore has written not comic books. He's written literature, ladies and gents. From Watchmen to Swamp Thing. I mean, the guy, as I said with all the others, look him up. But more important than looking him up, just to see the list of comics that he's done, read Alan Moore. Read his stuff. It's compelling. It's deep. And it's just mind-blowing how good. It's almost like, and I hate to say this in this context, I guess, but it's like, why are you writing comic books, man? You should be writing like the great American novel. That good, which is why I am so happy that he adopted the comic book genre and gave us some of the best, most compelling stories out there. Alan Moore is the man. All of them are, but yeah, Alan Moore. Oof, oof. Let's go on to the last one. Number 5 on the list should be very obvious, and it's none other than Stan Lee, the godfather of the Marvel Universe. If you don't know, Stan Lee was a writer. He was not an artist. He didn't draw anything per se. It was Jack King Kirby, Steve Ditko, and the list goes on of creative minds that put what his imagination came up with to ink and paper. But without Stan's contribution, then you wouldn't even have the, okay, well, I think I come up, okay, well, let me draw what you said I should draw, right? It's a collaboration. Now, there's a lot of controversy behind ownership and who has more credit than who. Okay, then this is not that video, But anybody that argues that Stan Lee or Stanley Lieber, who only changed his name to Stan Lee because he wanted to keep the Stanley Lieber name because he wanted to write the great American novel, as I just mentioned about Alan Moore. But he never got there. But who cares? He created more than just the great American novel. He created a mythos that will last more than a lot of our lifetime. I mean, he is our generation of Shakespeare, of Homer, of all these stories that will carry on forever. Therefore, Stan Lee, of course, makes my list. I mean, he created just out of nowhere, Spider-Man, the X-Men, Hulk, Iron Man. The list goes on. We all know what the list is. Stan Lee, Stan the Man Lee, the writer of writers. Love you, Stan. That makes up this list for this top 5. Has to be Stan on this list. But hey, let me know in the comment section. Who did I leave out? I know I left a lot out. Why do you, ladies and gents, think that I always say this in every video? This is such a hard segment to do because, I admittedly left out Kevin Eastman, the creator of the Turtles. I mean, there's Mark Millar, Brian Michael Bendis. The list goes on. I don't ever do honorable mentions, but this could be considered that, I suppose. But let me know in the comments section. Let me know. Who are your top 5? Or maybe not even top 5. Let me know somebody that I left off. Because I love reading your comments because it's almost like that revelation. Oh, I totally forgot to include. Oh, no. I love having that reaction. I love it. As always, ladies and gents, collect what you love what you collect, even if it's not necessarily statues and comics, but sometimes just knowledge. I'll see y'all in the next one.